We're going to start with one from Oscar. Should I put a future on Ole Miss to win the SEC? And this is one that I think in most past years, you'd have been like, okay, look, even though we think Ole Miss is going to be good, you still have to just put it on Georgia, put it on Alabama. We got Texas coming in this year. But all right, here's the thing. The Rebels are plus 650 to win the SEC. That's the third best odds. Georgia's plus 185. Texas is plus 310 at FanDuel. Alabama is plus 950. Like, Ole Miss has better odds to win the SEC than Alabama. The reason for that is all SEC schedules are not created equal. Ole Miss has one of the better draws in the new SEC. So Ole Miss's toughest games at LSU October 12th, Oklahoma in Oxford on October 26th, Georgia in Oxford on November 9th. I think they got to beat Georgia to guarantee that they get into the SEC championship game. Like, if they beat Georgia, they're probably in the SEC championship game because you're probably talking about an 8-0 or a 7-1 record in SEC play with a head-to-head against one of the better teams. But even if they don't beat Georgia, like, what if Georgia loses to Texas and Alabama? Because remember, Georgia has to play both of those teams. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, then Alabama's probably in and Texas is probably in. But Alabama has to play Missouri. Alabama has to play Tennessee. Texas also has to play Georgia. Texas has to play Oklahoma, obviously. So we don't know exactly how this is going to fall. But if Ole Miss can get to Atlanta, I think you're feeling pretty good at that point. I do think there's a good chance Ole Miss can get to Atlanta. I think the schedule sets up pretty well for them. If they beat Georgia, I don't see how you keep them out of Atlanta. The at LSU, that's been a house of horrors for Ole Miss over the years. But if Ole Miss is as good as we think they're going to be, they can win that game. They can beat Oklahoma at home. Kentucky at home, that could be tough. At Florida, we'll see what Florida is at that point. Florida is going to be in the midst of a just brutal stretch of the schedule. But absolutely, I do think this is a possibility. And, that feels like a shift from previous years. And I think it's kind of our belief that they have gotten better on the lines of scrimmage through the transfer portal, which we thought wasn't possible. And we'll see if it's possible. But when you pick up a Walter Nolan, when you pick up some offensive linemen to add to a pretty good offensive line you already had, when you pick up Princely Emmanuelen from Florida to be an edge rusher, this is a better team than last year, and last year's team was really good. But you saw when they went to Athens exactly kind of where the deficiencies were. It seems like Lane Kiffin has addressed those deficiencies in the portal. So we'll find out. Can they beat Georgia and Oxford? I think that probably is the one that answers the question. Christopher says, I see at least 10 wins for Ole Miss. Their schedule is nice. At LSU may be a problem in UGA. That gets you in the playoff. Yes, the playoff, but we're talking about placing a bet to win the SEC. And that is the difference here. Marshall says, Oklahoma will win it. I don't know what you mean by that. Oklahoma will win the SEC or Oklahoma will beat Ole Miss. Either way, probably hurts the future on Ole Miss. But it's not that far-fetched. I think in previous years, people would have said, well, you can't. No. Ole Miss to win the SEC? No, I think it's a very realistic possibility this year. It's certainly a much better future to put down than what we saw on Wednesday. So John Ewing is the data and PR guy from BetMGM. He tweeted on Wednesday that the Colorado Buffaloes have moved from plus 20,000 to plus 12,500 to win the national championship. 4.5% of bets, fourth most, are on Colorado to win the championship at BetMGM. That's from John Ewing at BetMGM. That is insane. You may as well light your money on fire. Also, if you're the book, if you're BetMGM, why are you moving the line? I realize when you have that amount of bets, that amount of money coming in that the algorithm says move the line. Like, don't move the line. They're donating to you. If 20,000 is making them donate more, leave it at plus 20,000. You're not going to have to pay off on that bet. Colorado's not going to win the national championship, guys. Like, Ole Miss winning the SEC championship is in the realm of possibility. Colorado winning the national championship. So getting into the playoff, then winning. I guess if Colorado's getting in, are we saying they won the Big 12? If we say they won the Big 12, then they're the 3 or the 4 seed. They still would have to win 3 games in a row against the best teams in the country. Like, you're insane if you're putting money on this. But 4.5% of bets. Notice they're talking about total bets. It's not 4.5% of the money. What it probably is people putting a little tiny bid on Colorado and saying, hey, I've got a future on Colorado to win the national championship. Isn't that funny? That's fine. But here's my thing. If you're going to bet on Colorado and you want to put a future on Colorado and you want long odds, why not something that is at least in the realm of possibility? Something that you might actually get paid off on. Colorado's plus 4,000 to win the Big 12. You heard the show with Ari Timken the other day when we did the ceilings and floors for everybody in the Big 12. Like, Colorado winning the Big 12 is not that crazy. It's not likely, but it's not impossible either. Plus 4,000, it's a pretty good payday if you plunk down $50 on that. But they're not winning the national title. They could win the Big 12 title. So, yeah, if you want to go for that plus 4,000 to say, hey, I've got a future on Colorado, rooting for Deion, I get it. But the national title is crazy. Oh, Goat Dog says Mattress Mac is insane then. Well, here's the thing. We just mentioned Mattress Mac on the show. Mattress Mac may sell some more mattresses in Houston. Why? Again, if you're going to do that, put it on them to win the Big 12. They can do that. That's not impossible. If they are better on the lines of scrimmage, they could be one of the better teams in the Big 12. It's possible. National championship, like, think of who they might run into in the playoff and just do a player-for-player matchup on that. Travis Hunter's great. Shedeur Sanders is great. It won't go well if they're having to play Ohio State or Georgia or Oregon or Alabama or Ole Miss. That won't go great. But, again, plus 4,000 in the Big 12, not outside the realm of possibility. In fact, I don't know, is the plus 650 for Ole Miss to win the SEC, does that feel any less likely or more likely than Colorado winning the Big 12? I think it's a little more likely because, like I said, if Ole Miss beats Georgia at home, they're probably in Atlanta. And once you're in Atlanta at that point, you're both pretty good teams. It's basically a toss-up, we think, at that point, especially with no divisions in the SEC. The assumption is the two teams that get there are going to be great and probably fairly equal. So really, it does, if Ole Miss is as good as we think, come down to that. Colorado, there's a lot more variables because there are all of the other teams in the Big 12 and a lot of variability. Kansas State, Utah. Ari Timken loves West Virginia. We don't know if TCU or Texas Tech is just going to be gangbusters this year. Oklahoma State still out there. They played for the Big 12 championship last year, bring back a ton of players. There's a lot of variability there. But again, if Colorado is improved on the line of scrimmage, they have some of the best skill position players in the league. They have the best single player in the league in Travis Hunter. So it's not impossible. But yeah, Go for the plus 4,000 Big 12, not the plus 12,500 national championship, because you are absolutely lighting your money on fire if you do that. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.